Welcome to Global Vision, and I'm super happy to have here with us Christina Neault, who I know for ages. And I could tell you that if I know something about fashion, is through her and some of the friends that I was just very fortunate to encounter when, for the first time, I got in touch with the Fashion Week back in 2016. It's in no, 2006, so it's been a long time. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you for having me. I was going to say, we've known each other more than 2016.
Yeah, 2006, actually. We go all the way back.
Exactly.
I would love to just for the audience to know who is Christina Knolt and all of the contribution that you have in fashion in New York, because not only in New York, I know in the world, but just give us a hint about who you are and your relationship with fashion.
So more or less what I do here in New York, I've been a fashion show producer for a little over 20 years. I started out in PR, but then I moved over to production. And I've been doing fashion shows, started in the men's industry, then moved over to working with what was called Seventh on Six, which was owned by the Council of Fashion Designers of America, and then was purchased by IMG. They brought me on board to help them with what was New York Fashion Week and to start LA Fashion Week and Miami Swim. So from there, I was full time with IMG, and I started consulting with a lot of their international properties. We purchased Sydney Fashion Week, Toronto Fashion Week, and then did a lot of consulting with Fashion Week in Korea and Mexico City.
Wow, you remember, I'm sure you remember when we went to Canary Island together, you even consult for us in
Oh,
Moda,
that's
Canada. You
right.
remember?
Yes. Based on my involvement with Miami Swim, which was a hugely successful event and one of the bigger swimwear events in the world. So you had invited me to the Canary Islands to see some of the events and the fashion shows that were going on there. That was a good time.
It was a great
And
time.
oh, La Rioja.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of Rioja, you remember?
Yeah.
One thing
Hmm.
I love about you, Christina, is your honesty, and you always been very blunt in the way that you advise people. And I would
Hmm.
love that you explain us, how do you see the fashion world changing right now? Because we are facing so many challenges. And of course, this Fashion Week 2021 has nothing to do with the Fashion Week that we knew about before. So can you just let us know what is your insight?
Well, I mean, it's a huge question, so I'll try and keep it a little bit more centered on the production world and the fashion show world.
Mhm.
Um, Fashion weeks and fashion shows were already kind of changing. I think what COVID did was accelerate a change that was already happening,
Mm.
in the way that there's not as many newspapers, there's not as many editors, there's not as many magazines. We live in a more digital world, a more virtual world. We don't have as much budgets to be flying around the world and going to events and shows and all of that. So it was already something that was kind of happening.
Mhm.
It kind of really forced us into a more virtual space, meaning we can't get together, we can't have big events, we can't have fashion shows and all of those things. That's one aspect. Part of it is, I don't think, and a really important part is, I don't think fashion shows are going away. I think this is a kind of a big blip in the screen. We'll be going back to events. We're social people. Fashion is an industry where you need to see, look, feel. You need to see that flow on a model, on a beautiful girl or a beautiful man. And, there's nothing that can compare or replace that.
Mm.
With that being said, I think the audiences are getting smaller, and it's going to have to become some sort of hybrid between the two. Meaning, if it's a New York designer and you're showing in New York, you're going to have the people that really matter here, and then you're going to send that out digitally, virtually, and whatever way you need to the rest of the world. We're a global economy. There's nothing you can do about that. It's going to continue to be more and more every day. We're becoming one world. And I think that it'll happen in all the other countries as well. Maybe all of our New York editors and buyers aren't going to always go to London, Paris, Milan. You know, there's going to be on-site people in those countries and those cities, and we'll get that virtually here. So it's going to become a hybrid. And, you know, the difference between fashion and many other industries and fashion weeks and fashion shows is we're not only business to consumer, we're business to business. So we're selling it, and we're also feeding that content out to our end clients, not only our buyers and our press, but our end client that's going to buy it in the store. So it gives us a little bit better control on how we're feeding content out, because we're oversaturating with Instagram and, you know, Pinterest and all of these other things. So if we have smaller events and less photographers and less international, like less people, we can control what that content is.
Mm-hmm. And what's the message now? What is the content? What fashion tries to be now? What is for you fashion right now?
Well, for me, or what fashion is, you know, I think fashion needs to slow down. I think this is also something that we've been talking about in the industry for a long time. We're creating a lot of clothes. We're creating a lot of almost too much. We're oversaturating. We're not buying that much. You know, it used to be that we did, you know, 2 collections a year, and then all of a sudden it's shipping once a month, and it's all these shipments, and these designers are going crazy because they're always creating a new collection. And then it gets into the store, and, you know, here anyway, you know, the bathing suits going to the store in December, January. And by the time you need a bathing suit in May, June, they're not available, or they're 70% off. So we need to slow that down from a retail perspective and a design perspective, because we can't make those margins. You know, you can't, if you're always on sale, then you're not paying for what you're making. So we need to slow it down a little bit.
And what is your sentiment regarding the designers? What is the challenges that they're facing right now? Particularly a designer from overseas that want to come to New York.
Well, I mean, what are we? You know, fashion is very resilient. It's about change. It's about change in politics. It's about change in the weather. It's all about change. So I don't know. This was a big hiccup. I mean, we lost a lot of money. I think every industry did. Probably fashion is probably one of the largest, which you see in all the retailers that are closing their doors. That you know, whether that translates to online sales, I'm not sure 100%, but it's a really good time to be creative. It's a really good time to kind of reflect on sustainability and what we're doing, what we're putting out there. So I think of it as it's more positive than negative. I think now that we're over the hump of COVID and everything it did physically and mentally to all of us, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that there's a vaccine out now. We can see that we're going to be in person, you know, within the next 5 or 6 months. We're going to be able to meet for dinner and, you know, put a pretty dress on and feel good about it and want to buy clothes. And I think the designers are wanting to design for that. I mean, you know, I think we're all sick of leggings and sweatpants and, you know, so I think it can be a really positive time. I think we're over that hump where we can think of the future and what great things, and we're not going to want to wear black anymore. Like, you know, I just picture everyone coming out in August with flowered dresses on and red blazers, and, you know, they might still be wearing their Birkenstocks, but I think everyone's going to want to see that like rejuvenation, so to speak.
Let's talk a little bit about the democracy of fashion. I mean, all about diversity and inclusion. What is your take on it? Because the last years we've been talking a lot about how fashion could be more inclusive. And
Yeah.
before it was supposedly like a very small group of people were supposedly in the fashion world. What is your, after 20 years, you have history and now you know where we're going. What is your opinion?
Well, the democracy in fashion, I mean, there's a few kind of levels there. There's who goes to the shows and who's part of it. It used to be very exclusive, of course. And again, with us losing all of the newspapers and the magazines, and it's become a more instant gratification with social media, that we've kind of had to open it up to everyone. And it's inherently opened up to everyone because we all have an Instagram account,
Mhm.
whether you were a buyer, a press person, or Jane Doe in LA. So it all, I think that's part of the thing that we need to do is slow down the content that we're putting out there so that we're not sick of fashion before it gets in the store. One, um, the democracy of the models that we're seeing on the runway, I think has come a long way. And I feel more positive about this than a lot of my cohorts do. We're seeing a lot more diversity on the runway, whether it's ethnic, whether it's size inclusivity, whether it's color or gender. We're seeing a lot of that. And, it's been the last 5 years where I don't do a show where there's not a representation from several different ethnic groups, whether it's a transgender woman or a transgender man. I think that everyone's a lot more open than that 6 foot, 110-pound girl waif because they're not the only ones buying clothes.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think designers didn't want that for a long time. But then you look at people like Christian Siriano, who's dressing beautiful women, of every size, color, stature, and he's doing really well doing it. And I think that a lot I use him because he's the most world probably known, but they're all opening up to that
What,
worldwide.
I mean, I always wanted to ask you, how do you handle the pressure of production? Because my image of you, it's always calm no matter what's going on. And we know that the production in the fashion, it's very difficult. What you will say, is required to really be a good production? Because I watch the shows that you put together and it's
Mhm.
magnificent. So what is the requirement to be like you and being able to put these shows together?
Lots of patience, um, which is funny because I don't seem to have a lot of patience in my personal life, but I do at work. Um, Troubleshooting and being able to handle a lot of things at once. And if there's a problem, I have the best team in the world, and that's really the key at this point in my career is I have people that I've worked with for a long time that come back season after season that I call and they say yes before I even tell them what the job is. And I know if there's a problem, they're going to come to me with the solution and not just the problem.
Hmm.
And it might be the right solution, it may not, but at least they're coming up with a solution or a band-aid. And if you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, then it was a good solution.
Absolutely. And also, one thing that you are known for is that you keep the designers happy, because we all know that for them it's like the final exam. Anytime that you show your fashion, it's so many things happening, and for them, in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it means everything for them.
Yeah.
So, how do you do it in order to make the designer happy? I mean, how do you take care of your clients?
Well, I mean, at this point in my career, I have a long lasting relationship with a lot of them and they've become friends. And, I spend a lot of time seeing what, talking to them about what they want and what the outcome is and what they want something to look like or how they, it- it's worse than a final exam. It's like having a baby every 6 months. This is their baby and they've been through the blood, sweat, and tears getting here. And it's really listening to them, getting what they want, and really kind of letting them know that they're creating the atmosphere of every single person around them. So if they're going to get crazy and screaming and all that, which doesn't happen as much as people that think it does, then everyone around them is going to be a nervous wreck. And when you love someone and you want them to present something in the best way possible, you'll do anything for them, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of getting them to realize that, because there's hundreds of people that go in that have a little work within a fashion week. It's not just two people putting a dress on a girl and sending her down the runway. There's hair and makeup and tailors and pressers and dressers and sound people and lighting people and caterers, and there's hundreds of people, and you want them all to do the best they can for you.
Absolutely. And just to finish, I want that you to let us know what is your thoughts about this current fashion week. I have read that a lot of the big names, particularly American designers that traditionally has been part of the fashion calendar in February, they're not present. We just have names like Jason Wu or Rebecca Minkoff that they've been showing with little presence. But what's happening in this sense that a lot of the designers are moving out of the fashion calendar, and why is that?
Well, I mean, there's a couple reasons. Mainly because it's again about timing
Hmm.
and whether September is the right time for Fashion Week. If we're trying to kind of flip what that switch is with the timing and when clothes are delivered, do we need to show something in September that we're not delivering until January? It's not 1950 anymore. We can, we don't have to wait 6 months for fabric and notions and it to be sewn and all of that. That all happens overnight. We don't even have to be there. We have computers, we have Zoom, we have all of these things. So do we need to release product or, again, content in September? I think you're going to see a lot more shows and more release of collections later in the year. Probably not right now, but maybe next month. And
Mhm.
I don't think anyone's kind of announced that but I think people are reevaluating what that means. It doesn't necessarily have to be done the first week in February. I mean, we're always better collective as a whole, but the bigger names, I don't know that they necessarily, does Tom Ford need to be part of 300 shows? He's probably a large enough name that he can do it on his own 2 weeks from now,
Mhm.
so on and so forth. So I don't necessarily, it's not like they're not putting out a collection. I just think that they're doing it in a different way
Mhm.
and maybe with just different timing.
Wonderful. And what are you doing right now? Tell us what is the nature of your work as a consultant, and how people we could find you when we need advice or put a show together.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm working, believe it or not, I'm working on some stuff for August and September.
Mhm.
Um, Probably some more consumer activated events
Mhm.
or for around shopping and here in New York, and hopefully we'll be doing CurvyCon in September, which is another consumer event that I work on, that where you do 2 days of shows, which is all in the plus size market. And working a little bit on virtual, augmented reality, virtual reality, which I'm not quite sure the fashion industry is ready for, but we will be going forward doing a little bit of consulting and getting ready for events when they do happen, because everyone is chomping on the events, chomping at the bit to do events when the world opens up, which should be soon.
Well, I cannot wait, Christina, and I love to be in your shows and in your events. So hopefully very, very soon we will be able to share another of these great moments together. And thank you so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and your insight with us today in Global Vision.
Thank you for inviting me.